Magic, White and Black, the science of finite and infinite life. The difference between vulgar prostitution of the body and the more refined prostitution of the intellectual faculties for the purpose of accomplishing selfish ends is merely that in the first class, merely the grossest parts of the human organization are misused, while in the other class, the higher and more permanent parts are misused. The consequences of the latter kind must therefore be much more lasting than those of the former. There are few women in the world who have become degraded from an inclination to be so. In the great majority of cases, they are the victims of circumstances which they had not the power to resist. But intellectual villains usually belong to the higher classes where want and poverty are unknown. To employ the intellectual powers for the mere purpose of making money is the beginning of intellectual prostitution. Blessed are they who are able to gain their bread by the honest work of their hands, for an employment which requires little intellectual attention will leave them free to employ their mental powers for the purpose of spiritual meditation and unfoldment, while those who spend all their mental energy upon the lower planes are selling their immortal birthright for a worthless mess of pottage which may nourish the body while it starves the soul. The greatest of all illusions is the illusion of self. Material man looks upon himself as something existing apart from every other existence. The shape of his form creates the illusion of being an independent, substantial whole, and the changes in that form take place so slow and imperceptible that the error is not perceived. Still, there is not a single element in his body, in the constitution of his soul, or in the mechanism of his intellect, that is not continually departing, and is replaced by others from the universal fountain of life. What belongs to him today belonged yesterday to another, and may belong to another tomorrow. In his physical form there is a continual change. In the bodies of organized beings, tissues disappear slowly or quickly according to the nature of their affinities, and new ones take their places to be replaced in turn by others. The human body changes in size, shape, and density as age advances, presenting successively the symbols of the buoyant health of youth, the vigorous constitution of manhood, or the grace and beauty of womanhood, up to the attributes indicating old age, the forerunner of decay and cessation of activity in that individual form. No less is the change in the soul. Sensation and desires change, consciousness changes, memories grow dim. No man has the same opinions he had when he was a child. Knowledge increases, intellect grows weak, and on the mental as well as on the physical plane, the special activity ceases when the accumulated energy is exhausted by transformation into other modes of action, or is transferred in other forms. The lower material elements in the constitution of man change rapidly, the higher ones change slowly, but only the highest elements are enduring. Nothing can be said to belong essentially to man but the character of his sixth principle in its union with the seventh. He who cares a great deal for his lower principles cares for things that are not his own, but which he has only borrowed from nature. While he enjoys their possession, an illusion is created, making them appear to be an essential part of himself, and his imagination revels in their fancied possession. They are, however, not more an essential part of himself than the clothes which a man wears, a constituent part of the man. His only true self is his character, and he who loses the strength of his character loses all his possessions. One of the kings of illusions is money, the king of the world. Money represents the principle of equity, and it should be employed to enable everyone to obtain the just equivalent for his labor. If we desire more money than we can rightfully claim, we wish for something that does not belong to us, but to another, and we repulse the divine principle of truth. If we obtain labor without paying for it its proper equivalent, we deprive others of justice and therefore deprive ourselves of the principle of truth, which is a more serious loss to ourselves than the loss of money to the defrauded. Money as such is an illusion. Only the principle of justice which it represents has a real existence. Nevertheless, we see the world lie at the feet of the form. The poor clamor for it, and the rich crave for more, and the general desire is to obtain the greatest amount of reward by giving the least possible equivalent. There are priests who save souls, and doctors who cure bodies for money. Law is sold to him who is able and willing to pay. Fame and reputation and the semblance of love can be obtained for money, and the worth of a man is expressed in the sum of shillings or pounds which he may call his own. Starvation threatens the poor, and the consequence of superabundance the rich, and some of the rich take advantage of the distress of the poor to enrich themselves more. Science exerts her powers to increase the amount of the material comforts of a man. It vanquishes the impediments presented by time and space and turns night into day. New engines are invented, and the work whose performance in former times required the use of 1,000 arms may now be accomplished by a child. An immense amount of personal suffering and labor is thereby saved. But as the means to satisfy the craving for comfort increase, a craving arises for more. Things that formerly were considered luxuries now become indispensable needs. Illusions create illusions, and desires give rise to desires. The sight of the principle is lost, and the golden calf is put into its place. Production is followed by overproduction. The supply exceeds the demand, the price of labor comes down to starvation rates, and on the rotten soil the mushrooms of monopoly grow. The more the facilities increase to sustain the battle of life, the more increases its fury. The noblest power of man, his intellect, whose destiny it is to form a solid basis for the highest spiritual aspirations of man, is forced to labor for the satisfaction of the animal instincts of man. The body flourishes and the spirit starves and becomes a beggar in the kingdom of truth. From the love of self arises the love of possession. Nearest to the illusion of self stands the illusion of love. True love is not an illusion, it is the power that unites the world and an attribute of the Spirit. But the illusion of love is not love, but only love's shadow. True love seeks only for the happiness of the object it loves, but animal love cares for itself and seeks only enjoyment. True love exists even if the form is dissolved. False love dies when the form to which it was attached decays. Ideal woman is the crown of creation and has a right to be loved by man. A male being who does not love the character of a woman bears only the semblance of a man, and man is not a complete being unless he possesses woman's love. A man who does not love beauty has no element of beauty in him. But the man who only fancies woman's attractions and not the woman herself is repulsed by her. If only his instincts attract him to her, she sees his weakness and is repulsed by it. She may be rendered vain enough by the possession of such charms as to enjoy the victory gained by them over a fool, but an intelligent woman looks upon such a victim as an object of pity and commiseration, and not as a source of strength. Man loves beauty, and woman loves strength. A man who is the slave of his desires is weak, and cannot command the respect of a woman he professes to love. If she sees him squirm under the lash of his animal instincts, she will not be able to look upon him as her protector and God. Man represents reason, and woman represents will. If the will is in harmony with reason, it will be as one. If they act against each other, illusions come into existence. Another illusion is the craving for physical life, and well may he crave for it who has no character of his own, because having lost his character, if he loses his life, he loses his all. Men and women cling to the illusion of life because they do not know what life is. They will submit to indignity, dishonor, and suffering rather than die. Life is a means to an end, and as such it is valuable. But why should life be so desirable as to sacrifice character for it? One life is only one temporary condition among 1,000 similar ones, through the which the character of a man passes in its travels on the road to perfection, and whether he remains a longer or a shorter interval at one station cannot be of any very serious importance to him. Man can make no better use of his life than to sacrifice it, if necessary, for the welfare of others, because this act will strengthen his own character, in which rests the source of his life and the power by which he is enabled to reappear in a new form. On the other hand, he who sneaks away from the battle of life for selfish purposes, or because he is afraid to continue its struggles, will not escape. He may wish to step out of life and destroy his body, but the law cannot be cheated. Life will remain with him until his natural days would have ended. He cannot destroy it. He can only deprive himself of the instrument through which he can act. He resembles a man who has to perform some work and throws away the instrument which would have enabled him to perform it. Vain will be his regrets. But if in the cases of sane suicides the illusion called life continues after the death of the physical body, and consciousness remains with the astral form, then a serious question arises in regard to the disposal of the bodies of such unfortunate persons. For wherever consciousness exists, there must be sensation. And as in such instances a magnetic connection is said to continue to exist between the astral man and his corpse, it appears not impossible that the post-mortem communications of suicides are true, and that injuries inflicted upon the body may under certain conditions be felt very acutely by the disembodied man. Another illusion is a great deal of what is called science. True knowledge makes a man free, but false science renders him a slave to the opinions of others. Many men waste their lives to learn that which is foolish and neglect that which is true, mistaking that which is evanescent and perishing for the eternal. Nor is their desire for learning usually caused by a desire to learn the truth, else they would not reject the truth when they see it. In the majority of cases, learning is not the aim, but the means to the aim of the student, while his real objects are the attainment of wealth, position, and fame, or the gratification of curiosity. The true wealth of a nation or a man does not rest in intellectual acquirements, but in spiritual possessions which alone will remain permanent.